Hello everyone, it's Nerdgasm here. Green Lantern has always been one of my favorite DC superheroes. The whole concept behind the emotional spectrum is one of the most brilliant in all of comics in my opinion. Many characters featured in Green Lantern stories, especially his villains, are heavily rooted in these elements. Not all, mind you, but the vast majority. Today, I will be ranking my picks for the 10 greatest enemies of Green Lantern, factoring in all of the hero's incarnations. These choices are my own personal ones, of course, so if I miss any characters you would have included on your list, just realize that we all have different tastes and preferences when it comes to villains, and I might not enjoy a given one as much as you do. Alright, let's begin. Starting off my list at number 10, we have Hector Hammond, a man gifted with a genius-level intellect as well as telepathic abilities, the result of being exposed to fragments of a mysterious evolution meteor he had found in the woods. This meteor was the same one that altered Flash villain Gorilla Grodd and the other gorillas of Gorilla City. The radiation of the meteor would increase the size of Hammond's brain, so much so that the rest of his body would become atrophied, forcing him to move around in a special chair. His psionic abilities do lead to a few interesting visuals in some of the stories he's featured in, but I've never been able to take him that serious as a villain, at least in comparison to some of the other characters on my list. Next up at number 9 is Neil Emerson, Dr. Polaris, a villain with a split personality that has the power to manipulate magnetic forces thanks to his specially designed costume and weaponry. His skill set shares many similarities to the X-Men villain Magneto, but his cool appearance, awesome name, and dual personality help set him apart from that character. Dr. Polaris has battled many Green Lanterns over the years, such as Hal Jordan, Kyle Rayner, Jessica Cruz, and Simon Baz. He's also fought several Justice Leaguers, by himself or as a member of the Suicide Squad. At number 8 we have William Hand, also known as Black Hand. Originally, he had the ability to drain the energy of a Green Lantern ring using a device known as the Cosmic Divining Rod. In later stories, however, his abilities would be expanded upon, allowing him to absorb the life force from living things using his right hand. William Hand is a messed up individual, morbidly fascinated and obsessed with death and decay. He would become the first member of the undead Black Lantern Corps, acting as its physical entity, in the same vein as Parallax. He would use his dark powers in an attempt to extinguish the light, and eventually summoned the Lord of the Unliving, Nekron, during the events of the Blackest Night storyline. Moving on to number 7 with Krona, a Malthusian, much like the Guardians of the Universe, who was a scientist on the planet of Oa. He had a twisted obsession with the origins of the universe, and would conduct various experiments to gain as much knowledge on it as possible. Krona would design a machine that would allow him to view the creation of the universe, but before it became clear, the machine would explode, shattering the universe, unleashing evil into the cosmos, and forming what would become the DC Multiverse. Krona would become banished by the Guardians of the Universe for his actions, but would eventually be transformed into a cosmic being of anti-energy, known as Entropy, by Nekron. In recent storylines, Brightest Day and War of the Green Lanterns, Krona would be depicted as a renegade guardian that would capture all of the emotional entities and absorb their powers. Next up at number 6 is Agent Orange, Larfleeze, easily the most unhinged and unstable villain among all of Green Lantern's enemies. His Orange Lantern Corps draws from the power of greed within the emotional spectrum. What's interesting about Larfleeze, though, is that he is the only member of his corps, having been so corrupted by its energy that he has killed all of his other teammates, refusing to share it with them. They now exist simply as orange constructs to aid him in battle, and nothing more. At number 5, we have Carol Ferris, the Star Sapphire, love interest of Hal Jordan, and member of the all-female Lantern Corps, known as the Star Sapphires. They wield the power of love within the emotional spectrum, and have played the role of both heroes and villains within the DC universe. Carol Ferris had clashed with the Green Lantern numerous times, developing a villainous persona, the result of being hypnotized by the founders of the Star Sapphires, an alien race known as the Zamarons. Moving on to number 4 with Atrocitus, the leader and founder of the Red Lantern Corps that channels the power of red rage within the emotional spectrum. Atrocitus, like all Red Lanterns, can vomit a napalm-like plasma out of his mouth. This is the result of their red power rings replacing the hearts in their bodies, constantly pumping intense rage through their veins. Atrocitus is one of the sworn enemies of the Guardians of the Universe, the founders of the Green Lantern Corps. His entire family had been killed by the android sentinels they created, called the Manhunters, which acted as the intergalactic police force before the Green Lanterns had been instituted. The robots had malfunctioned, not being able to determine right from wrong, and wiped out all life in that sector, in an event which has been labeled the Massacre of Sector 666. Within Green Lantern stories, there are several entities, each representing a color and an emotion within the emotional electromagnetic spectrum. They're basically the mascot of each of the Lantern Corps. The only one I feel the need to include on this list, however, in my number 3 spot, is Parallax, seeing as it is probably the most evil and corrupting out of them all. Parallax was responsible for Hal Jordan's murder spree during the events of 1994's Emerald Twilight, which I have reviewed on the channel. It also possessed the Kyle Rayner Green Lantern, imprisoning him within his own mind, among the pages of the 2007 Sinestro Corps War storyline. At number 2, we have Nekron, the Lord of the Unliving, one of the most powerful forces the Green Lanterns have ever faced, who acts as the physical manifestation of death within the DC universe. He leads the Black Lantern Corps, an army of undead heroes and villains that wield the power of Black Death within the emotional color spectrum. Nekron may not be the greatest Green Lantern villain from a narrative perspective, but he is my personal favorite. I love his design, similar to that of a Grim Reaper, and of course the whole zombie angle, having the ability to raise the dead. Nekron has been around since the early 1980s, but it's his revamp in the late 2000s during the events of the Blackest Night story that cement his place on my list. Blackest Night is my favorite Green Lantern story, and my favorite crossover event in all of comics. I have reviewed it on the channel before if you'd like more info and background on it. And finally, at number 1, my pick for the all-time best Green Lantern villain is Thal Sinestro, a former member of the Green Lantern Corps who was considered to be the greatest Green Lantern in its entire history. Sinestro would become the mentor and trainer of many new recruits, the last of which being Hal Jordan. The two would become close friends, but unfortunately, Sinestro would slowly be corrupted by his power and become exiled from the Green Lantern Corps by the Guardians of the Universe. Sinestro would forge a Yellow Lantern power ring to oppose the Green, and formed his own Lantern Corps known as the Sinestro Corps, hell-bent on bringing order and control to the entire universe. Sinestro and Green Lantern, specifically the Hal Jordan Green Lantern, have one of the greatest rivalries in all of comics. Friends turned bitter enemies. At some point down the road, I should review the storyline The Sinestro Corps War, another one of the essentials when it comes to Green Lantern. Well, that's gonna do it for this top 10. I want to thank you all for watching. If there are any villains you feel I should have included on this list but didn't, just leave them in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon to be notified of all the future content I release. I will see you all in the next one. Take care and stay nerdy.